Welcome to Build Out with Jim Kunkel, your go-to broadcast for learning more about business in the real world. Your host, Jim Kunkel, who is an accomplished professional in business development, sales, and marketing, and is a technical content creator along with being a rising influencer on LinkedIn. On Build Out, you'll get the latest information and knowledge from subject matter experts from across the globe. Okay, let's get this Build Out broadcast started. And here's your host, Jim Kunkel.
Welcome to Build Out. I'm Jim Kunkel. Joining me for today's episode is Jill Alexander, who's the Vice President of Marketing from Safewaze. Jill, welcome.
Welcome. Good to see you again and be back on Build Out.
Hey, Jill, before we would start, for those who might not know who you are, if you could do a background on yourself and also talk a little bit about what Safeway does and what you do in the various industries that you work in.
Sure. So about a year and a half ago, I was one of the COVID flighters on my job change and was fortunate to land a great position with an aggressively growing company. So Safewaze is the most responsive partner in the fall protection industry. And so we primarily serve construction, industrial, do a lot of work in utilities with solar and wind and gas tower. So we provide PPE for fall protection. So harnesses, anchors, connectors, devices. And part of that is providing the training and the expertise around the equipment, which is critical to the proper use. So I started in marketing there and was promoted to Vice President of Marketing last October. And we went from a team of 0 or a team of 1 when I started. We now actually have 5 people on the marketing staff at Safewaze. We acquired a company in Florida, our sister company that does scaffolding and rigging, so that it's kind of an associated business that opens some opportunities for us. And we are just looking forward to continued growth.
That's great. That's great news. And you and I have had an opportunity to work on a couple different episodes related to marketing, and then we did one related to more or less when you're dealing with issues related to the building trades and the construction industry, all the stresses they deal with, and mental health. And I kind of laughed about when we had our pre-conversation prior to this broadcast, where you wanted to stress that you're not a psychologist. Why aren't you a psychologist?
Way too much responsibility there. So it's funny. I have been just fascinated by human behavior my entire life, and just why people do the things they do, and making connections and relationships between people and products and services and groups and all kinds of connections among people, because really that's at the heart of every business. And so as I was in high school and discovered that I had a talent for communications and for writing and for design and certain aspects of marketing more so than others, I said, wow, this is an area that I can combine kind of my passion for people and helping people and doing something meaningful. And then I started looking into, sociology and psychology and psychiatry. And I said, that is just way, way too much responsibility for me personally to be able to say, hey, I think I would feel that a little too strongly. And so pivoted that into, okay, how else can I continue to be fascinated by what makes people tick? And then combine that with some of these things that I happen to do really well, which drove me into a career in marketing. And I think I had even joked with you once that I went to college for marketing, so that's all I've been doing my entire life. And I just love it.
Well, you definitely have an advantage. You come in, you do understand, you have an awesome communication skill set, and you also do have a great you're an active listener. You have a great ear when it comes to understanding exactly what not only customers want, but what the general industries are looking for example, with Safewaze. Now, understanding behaviors is super critical, not only in marketing, business development, sales, pretty much every aspect of business. Understanding behaviors are very important. But when it comes to marketing, how do behaviors impact marketing, in your opinion?
Yeah, so there's, you could look up, Google behavior, Google marketing. You're going to come up with 27 different definitions for each. So I really tried to just distill. To me, behavior is really just what makes a person react or act the way they do. And you think about it, a lot of times it can be proactive, but a lot of times it's in response to something. How does a person react? Is how we often feel and how we start to categorize people's behaviors. And so for marketing, you take that from a company. How is a company trying to act to promote their product or their service? And really, for me, that intersection is that the end goal of marketing is to influence people's behavior, and not in a negative way, not in a manipulative way. You're not going to be successful if that's how you're trying to do your marketing, but in a way that is influencing the behavior of the customer to help them find something that they need, to help give them a solution for a need or a problem that they're already looking for. And so, for example, we've been doing, the aggressive growth at Safewaze, we've been doing a lot with merchandising. And how do we're a B2B company. And so how do we put this fall protection equipment on display in our distributor's warehouse where contractors and safety directors are coming in to look for product? And how do you want that consumer to behave when they're standing in front of a display of harnesses and anchors and things that they're looking for? And if it's, as something as simple as, is it easy to access? Can they read the labels? Can they see? Is the lighting good? Are they able to reach out and touch and take the product off easily? And these are things that a consumer reacts to based on the way that it's presented. So that's that integration of marketing and people's behavior. We're also building out a new website, which is really exciting. We're looking to launch that, knock on wood, here in April. It's been over a year in the works. So that's a whole nother monumental project that we're making progress on. And it is heavily influenced by customer behavior. What do you want that user to do when they come to your website? So maybe that you're promoting your new catalog that you printed and you want them to click on a link to request a catalog. So that link has to be prominent and easy to find on the website. Or maybe it is part of an exit campaign. As they're moving their mouse to close out of the browser window, the pop-up says, hey, have you requested your Safewaze catalog? And so it's thinking about the ways that the consumer is behaving or might behave and how you want them to behave. That it's that intersection that I find so fascinating.
Yeah, I love that word intersection. I've heard you use it multiple times. And the other thing, too, that you and I had a conversation with in this, probably, I think it was either the fall or the late summer when you were on my evening broadcast, we talked about the customer journey. And for you, for Safewaze, for a lot of marketing entities and companies, that journey is very, very critical to have mapped out and have a full understanding. Could you take us through the elements of a customer journey related to marketing?
Yeah. And again, you're going to find people define the customer journey, the customer experience in a couple of different ways, and none of them are wrong. It's just how, what resonates with you and what works with your market. And again, it's understanding where the consumer's behavior is, what are their emotions, what are their needs at that particular moment. And so we think of the marketing journey starting with awareness. And in that particular moment, the potential customer may not have a need for your product. Their primary emotion might be satisfaction. They're completely happy with their fall protection provider or whatever, company, product, service that you're providing. And you just want to make sure that they're aware. You want to have a presence so that when the opportunity arises, they know to come and look for you. And so we as marketers spend a lot of time in that awareness camp and making sure that we're having the right tools in the right channels, that we're available where our customers are. And you want to move from something happens, there's a disruptor in this person's world that moves them to consideration, where they are now thinking about actively needing your product or service. And at that point, perhaps they're dealing with frustration and they're disgruntled with the provider. Or perhaps they're really happy with the provider and their boss just told them they have to get 3 quotes. So those are 2 different types of motivations and 2 different types of behaviors that you may need to understand for a customer that's in that consideration stage. And what they're really looking for is access to information. So your job is to make that information accessible and easy for them to find. You hope that you move into that evaluation stage, which we consider next, where they're actually gathering product information. And you want to be a part of that as they're looking to compare. Typically you hear you want to be in the top three, of what they're considering. So they're doing research, they're making comparisons. Perhaps you have a product trial that you want to make sure that they have a sample of your product available if you know that that's going to be essential to that purchase decision. And in that part, they need, the consumer needs access to not just the information, but oftentimes very specific answers to questions that they may have. From there, you may move into the purchase. At that point, they make a decision, and hopefully, you get a PO or you get they write a check. And so, at that point, your consumer is invested in your company. And it's interesting to think that they may be very satisfied. They may say, "Hey, I am really excited that I made this decision to connect with Safewaze, and you're going to become our new fall protection provider." But you also need to be aware that potentially they could have the FOMO. They could have that fear of missing out, right? Buyer's remorse, we often hear. So being just aware that you want to continue to give someone who's just made the decision to purchase your product, you want to make sure that they're validated, that they feel secure in that decision that they made. And so one of those things that, we have just been starting to talk about at Safeways that a lot of customers do is how do you welcome that new customer into thanking them for their business? It could just be a simple email that says, "Hey, thanks for making your decision to become our customer," or "Thanks for placing your first purchase order with us," potentially a free gift, a discount, those things that are appropriate to make sure that consumer who just decided this is really what you wanted, they just decided to use your company, that they feel validated with that decision. And then from there, they have to often implement that decision, right? They've made the purchase and now they're getting your product. And then what? Oftentimes we as business professionals fall short there. And so you have to think about, for us, since we're B2B, how do we help this new distributor reach their consumer with our product? So we have this new merchandising program so that they can now display the product in their warehouse. We have great marketing resources and support. We have a graphic designer on staff now. We are able to provide photography and descriptions, whatever information that they need, that our customer needs to now be successful with the product or service that they've purchased with us. We want to make sure that they continue to feel excitement and not frustration because they're not getting the support they need. And all of that, hopefully done well together, then will help you build that brand loyalty, which is kind of the golden aha that all of us marketing and many business owners strive for, where you have a customer who is very satisfied with your business and is sharing that information and is a repeat customer. And, it's funny, our sales VP has a lot of sayings. And one of the ones that I love that he talks about is, keeping the front door open and the back door closed, right? And making sure that your customers continue to be satisfied and not taking them for granted, and making sure that they are continuing to get that same kind of service that you showed them when they signed up, as they are, continuing their experience with you as a provider. So, and it's just really understanding what the customer needs. It's making that connection between the people that are using your products.
Yeah, to that element about keeping the back door closed. And everyone watching probably knows, and maybe have experienced it in their professional life. If you lose a customer, it is extremely difficult to win them back and get them back.
Right.
And what I like about your customer journey is that, throughout this whole process, you're defining the behaviors, the emotions, and the needs at each stage of this process. So it's a very thorough process, a very concise process. And to your point, it probably matches and mirrors a lot of other stages out there that other professionals might view the customer journey. So let's talk a little bit about, behavioral psychology. When it comes to marketing, what What is it?
Again, I like to keep things really, really simple. And so really it's the study of the connection between mind and behavior. So what you're thinking and how you're acting. And sometimes, as we all know, as human beings, those things don't always go together, right? And traditional behavioral psychology is centered around the belief that all of our behaviors are a result of our past experiences, our conditioning. Obviously, you have nature versus nurture. I believe that, wholeheartedly that both play a very important part. But as human beings, we have certain things that we're exposed to in the world that make a really profound impact on how we see the world. And so all of those experiences and all of those things that we live through and think and feel are predictors of future behavior. And so, for example, in merchandising, you hear often about, just using colors, and that's social, that's just societal here in the United States. It's not even necessarily true globally. Whereas red is a very high alert, stopping kind of color, and blue is a very calming and reflective color. And so when you're doing merchandising display, when you think about, the safety industry, reds and orange and yellows are stop, caution, and greens are always going to be your green light, go, this is safe, this is okay to do. And even just that idea of how our brains work in terms of clutter and making sure that things are neat and clean and inviting for people. Because when you see something that is a neat and organized space, it gives you mentally that space to stop and think about things and reflect and feel comfortable, rather than just something being chaotic and you're trying to pick up a product and look at it and figure out how it works or what it looks like in this space that's not conducive to thinking. Again, with using the website, understanding from a user experience, things that are on a website that move, people are attracted to motion. And so you have hover effects that, as you're moving your mouse over something that might grow or glow, it might have a color, or it might have a pop-up. So those are things that entice users and in this world of competing attention, give them some stimulation that will capture and continue to hold their attention. It's also just important to understand, as a user is coming into your website, what are they there for, right? Are they looking for information? Are they, if you think about, am I going to the grocery store for milk? I'm in, I got my milk and I'm out. Or am I going to the grocery store to shop? Am I coming to the store to browse through the aisles? Am I coming to the website because I want to access information? I want to compare products. I want to look around. They're just two different types of parts of the customer journey that are going to have different behaviors. And so we can look at, statistically, a big part of marketing, how do consumers typically behave on a website, on social media, and capture a lot of those statistics that will help us design programs to take advantage of making the experience better for customers. One of the things I love about behavioral psychology is the psychology of risk, which is obviously huge in my current profession. But it's also just all in marketing. When you talked about that fear of missing out, what is the risk of purchasing this product? What is the risk of not purchasing this product? So whether you're weighing a risky behavior, like I'm going to climb up on this ladder and I'm going to be 6 feet in the air, versus I'm going to climb up on the scaffolding and I'm going to be 16 feet in the air. Actually, a lot of falls from height are more fatal in that 8 to 10 foot range. So it's really important to realize that it's a perception of risk and not necessarily a reality of what the risks are. But people behave in a way where they weigh the perception of the likelihood of the risk versus the degree of the risk. So if I'm 5 or 6 foot up, I feel safer. I feel like even though the likelihood that I might fall is the same, whether I'm at 6 foot or 16 foot, the danger, or what I feel like the danger is at 5 or 6 feet, I might hurt my ankle, right? You don't think about I could die. You're 16 feet up, three stories up on a scaffold. I fall and I very likely will have a serious injury and potentially death. I'm much more likely, even though the risk is the same, the level degree of risk is the same, I'm much more likely to wear my safety equipment at that higher height. But it even applies to things like, purchasing shoes and boots. The more money you spend, the more heavily that thought weighs on your mind in terms of my risk of wasting this money. Or buying sneakers versus that you're going to walk around, the mall in, versus I'm going to buy some boots that I'm going to hike the Appalachian Trail on a through hike. The risk of these boots not being comfortable and not lasting is impactful, is highly impactful to my enjoyment of my trip. And so that is a psychological risk as consumers, we make purchase decisions. And so to me, that's the part that's always been really fascinating.
Yeah, I can very much in the industry that I work, I can really relate to the safety aspect and, you can never eliminate all risk. You want to try to mitigate it or lessen the impact of risk. And then the other thing too is really minimizing risk to others as well. I've seen tools drop from heights and things like that. So, hard hats and lanyards on equipment or tools is very important as well. Before we get into talking about behavioral economics, what I wanted to share with you, a recent occurrence that has happened with a friend of mine who is a professional engineer, and really a company that I've come to really appreciate and really understanding behaviors and really marketing based off of the understanding of behaviors is Tesla. A friend of mine is purchasing a Tesla. And the thing, what's interesting about it is he's a type of person who does a lot of research. And I would have assumed he would have been the person, and I'm not, if you own a Tesla, want to buy a Tesla, I'm not saying anything negative about it. But for me, I know when I look into something like a Tesla and I understand what goes into produce it, the maintenance cost. Right. The other thing is, what happens when you get rid of your Tesla, versus a conventional type of vehicle, how that process is to recycle it or reclaim it back. Right. There's so many things that go in there that don't really scream 100% green efficiency. We're not there yet with the technology. We will be one day. And it was interesting to see my friend. He really got hooked on getting a Tesla, and he's getting a Tesla. And I think it's because they really understood how to play on someone's social position, how to, that impact when it comes to, hey, you want to have an all electric vehicle. And, when I look at their marketing materials and I look at their commercials and things like that, I'm amazed with how super successful they are as a company, especially, like I say, in this stage of the technologies. Behavioral economics when it comes to marketing, what is it and why is it so important?
It's funny because I don't read off, I'm an avid reader and I don't typically read off of screens, but I was desperate for a book one day and I was flipping through the free books on my screen and I saw this book called Misbehaving. And I was like, ooh, that sounds exciting. And it turns out it's a book on behavioral economics. And I'm like, this is not really what I had in mind, but it ended up being a fascinating read. So really it's just applying the psychology of behavior to real world, actual purchase behaviors. And the fascinating thing is that they often don't mesh up. Economic folks and economic theory is extremely rational. And it makes me think of Spock right? This is very cut and dry. There's no room for shades of gray. And of course, as people, we are full of shades of gray and we don't always make rational decisions. We don't always behave in a way that economic theory predicts people will behave. And so that's where this idea of behavioral economics came into, taking the psychology of, well, why aren't people doing these things that we predicted they should be doing, right? So one of the most brilliant examples of that to me is the Disney Vault. And many of us can remember the release of the new Disney movie and then it's gone. And pre-digital era of social media and YouTube and all of the Netflix and streaming TVs, that was it. You didn't get to watch Dumbo anymore. It's gone, right?
Yeah.
And so that illustrates the principle of scarcity. And the more that something is inaccessible, the more that people seem to want it. It seems to be wired in our brains. And we all experienced that in the beginning of COVID. If you remember, what did everybody want? What were we all missing? Toilet paper, right? I mean, just people went nuts.
I was gonna say Tiger King, but everybody watched Tiger King, so
because it was everywhere.
But I remember toilet paper. It was they were rationing it and everything.
There was really no danger of us ever running out of toilet paper. There was no real rational scientific evidence or economical theoretical evidence to show that we were ever in danger of running out of toilet paper. But the thought that we might run out of toilet paper made everyone go out and buy more toilet paper. So the idea that if there is a perception that there is less of something, then we want to make sure we are one of the ones who have it. And that's also with the Tesla example. You know, you get that with just that perception of esteem, right? And prestige. Mm-hmm. The more something is scarce, if somebody has it, then they must be special. And whether that's by cost or whether it's by something else, an MVP ring for a Super Bowl or something, you know, that person has done something that has enabled them to have something that's very rare. And so the idea is that must be better. That's an economic principle that doesn't necessarily always mesh with human behavior. And, you know, we deal a lot with, as human beings, and in this social media era, we deal a lot with social status, which is, you know, again, from our predecessors. It is the early times of man, that, you know, there's a hierarchy of hunters and gatherers and people who do this or who are protectors and people who do these functions, and the importance is influenced by the culture. You know, obviously you have different effects there. And then you have all of this social media now taking advantage of that. The more popular something is, the more we as human beings perceive that it must be valuable. It's almost like the opposite of the scarcity effect. But, you know, you see it on LinkedIn. If, you know, those algorithms are built so that the more people comment on things, oh, people are commenting on this, it must be something that other people should hear about too. The more that something is liked, the more visibility that it's going to get. So being able to understand how these things can help drive some of our marketing decisions and some of our business decisions that are based around psychology. My favorite example that I had never heard of until, I guess it was probably maybe 10 years ago that I read that book, is this idea of sunk cost and this tendency to continue to invest in something once you're already invested in it. We see it in relationships, right? You know, oh, we've been together so long and the relationship goes really south and it's a bad relationship and there's too much time and energy invested. People don't want to make the break. It's very true with, you know, maybe a product that you've used and you're like, oh, well, this weed whacker doesn't really work that well, but the handle just really fits, and it was my dad's weed whacker and I've just had it, and they have this emotional investment or this financial investment in something. And it was this idea in the book that, you know, as parents, you might buy your kids a toy or buy your niece or nephew or a toy, and you've got this investment in it, and you're like, oh, and the kid opens it and they don't play with it. And you're like, okay, well, I invested in that toy. So there needs to be value. The child needs to play with it. Or I invested in this, these boots or this hat or this coat, and I need you to wear it because I bought it, but I hate it. It's not comfortable. Or I hate this toy. It's loud and obnoxious and I wish it was in the closet, but I have to let my kid play with it, or I have to wear this scratchy sweater because I spent money on it.
It's not purple.
That's a behavioral aspect, does not mesh with pure economic theory, because the economics is that it's a sunk cost. If you paid $100 for that toy that whizzes and bangs that your sister-in-law hates and threw in the garbage, it doesn't matter. You paid $100 for it. That cost is gone, whether your little nephew loved the toy and played with it and got joy out of it, or whether your sister-in-law threw it in the trash. $100 gone. Either way, it's a sunk cost. But as human beings, we don't obviously behave that way because there's so much more we're just more complex than that. And isn't that great?
Yeah, your story, what you were talking about with the sister-in-law, that's not that's an example, not a real life story, is it?
That is not a real story. We did fight those battles with my kids with clothes all the time though. And so that was one of the examples in the book. And it was like, you're like, I bought you these $50 jeans, you better wear them. Or I bought you these sneakers, you better wear them. Okay, well, they choose to go back and wear the, other 3 pairs of shoes they have all the time. And you're like, okay.
So Jill, let's wrap up our journey here, understanding behaviors in marketing. During our conversation, you've covered so much. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you would want to leave with the viewers?
I just love this idea, this one story, this meeting that I was in, and this was 15 or more years ago. So cell phones were out, but they were very new. They weren't everywhere, and they weren't as readily, easily, acceptable, and the expectation that everybody had one. And we were in a meeting, and there was this person, out of college that was in the meeting on their phone, just the whole meeting on their phone, just glued to their phone. A parent did not seem to be paying attention. And the vice president of whatever, I don't even know, say it was vice president of marketing at that time. I was, probably middle level. And then you have this entry level person on their phone. This person was offended and pulled this person aside within my earshot and was like, "What are you doing? I cannot believe you were so rude to have been on your phone while I was talking at that meeting." And the person looked up and went, "I was taking notes." Okay. So just that idea of trying to understand people's behaviors before you make assumptions. And so my challenge to everyone with considering behaviors in marketing is to ask more and assume less, is to just ask what's going on, ask about the behaviors. Don't make assumptions that your consumers are going to behave a certain way. If you don't understand something that your consumers are doing, ask, find out.
I love that because I do know they say when you assume I can't remember the rest of it, but I'm sure somebody out there watching right now remembers what happens when you assume. Jill, question for you. How do people get in contact with you, social media, and also too with Safewaze? I know you talked about rolling out a new website, but people might want to connect with you guys.
I invite everyone to visit our new website probably towards the end of April, and it is Safewaze.com. So just about as easy as you can get. You can reach me at my email. Also, another fabulously easy one to remember. It is Jill@Safewaze.com.
Excellent. Excellent. Jill, thank you so much for this opportunity to have a conversation with you. I learned so much about behaviors in marketing, and I think I can become a more effective and efficient and impactful marketer now after talking with you.
Thank you. It was great to be on and enjoyed it. Hopefully we'll do something again soon.
Great. Everyone, thank you for watching this episode. Make sure you do like it. And if you have any colleagues that would find value with watching this episode, please also share it with them. And also to anyone in your connections network, feel free to share this video as well. Jill, have a great day.
All right, you too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope you found value with today's Build Out broadcast. Make sure you connect with Jim on LinkedIn and subscribe to his YouTube channel. This way you'll be notified on new live streams and when new content is released. Please give today's broadcast a like and share with your connections and colleagues. Thanks for watching, and please visit buildoutproductions.com for additional content and to join the mailing list so you can keep updated on other streams and quality content from the creators on the Build Out Productions team.